This is my June reading wrapper. Hello everyone, Mariah here and welcome back to my channel. It's such a rainy and gloomy day today and I'm so here for the autumnal vibes. I know we're only in the summer, but honestly, autumn could not come quick enough. I don't know about you, but I'm such a vampire. I really don't like the summer or the heat. Just give me the dark, gloomy, miserable days every single day of the week. Also, can we take a second to appreciate my new hoodie? It's got a little coffee shop on the front and on the back I'll have to insert a picture or a little video, but it has like a coffee menu on the back and I got it for £15. I just thought it was so good. It's from Pull & Bear in case anyone is interested, but oh my goodness, it's so cozy and so cute and it's coffee, my favorite thing ever. Super cute. I just had to show you. This video is going to be ever so slightly different compared to normal because I'm not just doing the books that I read in June, but I'm also going to be including 2 books that I read in the first half of July as well. The reason for that is because I have decided to participate in a book challenge. I literally only started it a couple of days ago and it's called Read the Rainbow Challenge. It's just because I wanted to get through my TBR and I just thought it'd be fun to do some sort of challenge to help me get through the books I need to read. So I just went onto Google and typed in book challenges and that one came up and I basically just read a book that corresponds to the colour of the rainbow. But because that's going to take quite a while to read all of the books, I expect that's probably going to be maybe my August wrapper. I thought it would just be good to include the 2 books that I read in July that aren't part of that challenge now, just to fit it all together. And as always, I'll be taking you through a little bit about the book and all of my thoughts and feelings in a completely spoiler-free way. And you may have also noticed that I'm not holding an Illumicrate subscription box anymore. This is going to be one of the first videos in quite a while where I'm not going to be doing any form of unboxing. I had to make a really sad decision to cancel the subscription, and it's just because I just really don't have the space for the books anymore. I absolutely loved receiving the box every single month because I'm more of a fan of the merch than the books half of the time. I absolutely love bookish merch so much. But realistically, I was just running out of space. And maybe one day when I move out and I've kind of got my own space and more room, I can start it back up again. But I also kind of came to the realistic terms as well that I just wasn't reading the books that I was getting. I am very much interested in pretty much every single one of the books that I've received, but none of them are priority on my TBR at all. So I just never know when I'm going to get around to reading them. So I just thought rather than pay the money every month, just pause it until I move out and I'm ready to start it back up again. And if there are any books or pieces of merch that I really want, I just buy them off Vinted instead. It's just cheaper and easier. So yeah, sad that I don't have anything to unbox, but never mind. I also have a very adorable update for you as well. Because there's not going to be a July reading wrap up, because like I said about the book challenge, I really wanted to include a cute little update for you that happened a couple of weeks ago. So I would like you guys to meet Sadie. Sadie is our newest member of the family. I got her as a surprise for my dad. You may have seen over on my Instagram and on my TikTok, but if you haven't, then here you go. Sadie is now 12 weeks old and she is a Labrador and she's a red fox. So you have golden labs, but then these ones go slightly more chestnutty and red. She's ever so adorable. She's such a good pup as well. She's so playful and she's kind of going through her nibbling stage at the moment, but she's gotten so much better and she's so well trained already. She knows to go outside for toilet breaks and she's just so clever and so sweet and she's just the cutest thing. I've never had a puppy before, so getting this puppy was just the cutest thing in the world and I loved every single second of it. It was so incredibly difficult to leave the house and come back home after taking her to my dad's because I just grew so attached to her. I think because me and Ash went and picked her up together and she went straight over to Ash and we knew that she was the one, and then we had to take her to dad's and I spent the week with her. Honestly, I just fell so in love with her. I was waking up early in the mornings to be with her and play with her and let her out and all sorts. But she's doing so well. She's settled in amazingly. My dad absolutely loves her. He was so grateful for her. But I needed to share that pup date with you because she was just way too adorable to not include in the video and show and tell. We have Missy, but she's too big to fit on my lap. So I sadly can't hold her up in a video. She's looking at me now as if to say, you said my name. I will give you guys pup dates whenever I go and visit, and I'll include clips of her in future videos as well if you want to see her. So you will definitely be seeing her again. So with that being said, get comfy, get cozy, and let's have a bookish catch up. I always want to get comfy by putting my feet up on the chair, but for some reason, and I don't know whether it's my floor or whether it's the chair itself, but I will just slowly start spinning and I will just end up facing the bookshelf. I don't know why it happens, but it means I always have to keep one foot on the floor, so it's really annoying. So the first book that I finished in the month of June is a book that has officially joined the 6-star club, and that book is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. You may have heard of it. It is a very popular book, and it is a historical fiction set in Germany during the events of World War II. It follows the story of our main character called Liesel, who is a young girl when we're first introduced to her, and she is sent away to go and live with her new foster parents, and you'll find out why she has to go and live with them later on in the book. While she is there and living with her new foster parents, she begins to start stealing books, and it's essentially her way, I think, of coping through the really difficult times and journey that she has to go through. Her foster father teaches her how to read and write, but eventually she kind of tells her foster father, and he begins to read these books out loud to her. And they're super random books, but she really treasures them because they really help her and the family through really difficult times. The biggest thing in this story, though, is that they are hiding a Jew in the basement. And Liesel becomes very good friends with him. And obviously, they have to be really careful because if ever they find him there can be really severe consequences. And you are constantly on edge because you're just thinking like, oh my gosh, like, is he going to get caught? Is he going to get found? He helps Liesel to get better with reading as well, and he allows her to kind of read him stories, and they form this really close bond, and it's just the sweetest thing ever. But it's a very soul-destroying book. Like, unless you want to be traumatized, don't read this book. It's very, very sad. It's very heartbreaking. And you know full well that bad things are 100% going to happen in this book. I just wanted to find out what things were going to happen. But the most unique thing about this book, and it's something I really, really liked, is it's narrated by Death. So essentially, Death is kind of speaking in first person now and then and is introducing you to the characters. But then the story itself is all in third person. But Death kind of pops up now and then and will say things like, oh, I should probably tell you that this is about to happen, or that person's going to do this. And it kind of makes you go, oh my God, like, what the hell's going on? It just knows how to keep you hooked. And like I said, you know bad things are coming, but you just don't know exactly when or how. And yeah, it's really gut-wrenching, really, really sad, but such an amazingly written book. In my opinion, historical fiction is probably one of, if not the best genre. I absolutely love historical fiction so much. I think because obviously they're based on historical events, you know that people really had to go through these things, and it's so heartbreaking, and people still do go through some of the things even to this day. Obviously the story itself is fictional. I mean, who knows, maybe there was a girl stealing books during that time. What I'm trying to say is, even though the story is made up, the events and the feelings that people went through are very much real. And yeah, it's just so incredibly heartbreaking. I literally bawled my eyes out. Like, I have cried in books briefly before, but definitely not as much compared to this book. I know people who have read this book as a teenager as well, and I'm just like, how can you read this so young? Like, it traumatized me, let alone being like 14 years old reading it. I do think this is one of those books that I think everybody should read at least once. If anyone has any good historical fiction recommendations, please send them my way, because I really love this genre like so much. The second book that I finished in the month of June was a thriller, and I love a thriller because it's a nice little palate cleanser for me. I do love my thrillers, and it was Never Lie by Freida McFadden. This was actually my first Freida McFadden book, and I do have, I think, The Inmate from her as well, and I've heard really good things about her books. I'd quite like to read The Housemaid. I think that's one of her more popular ones, but I found them in a charity shop, so I just thought they'd be handy to pick up. So in this story, it follows two characters who are a newlywed couple, and they go to this huge house, this big mansion, for a house viewing because they're looking to buy the property. And this house used to belong to a psychiatrist, but but she mysteriously disappeared and no one ever found out what happened to her. But there's a huge snowstorm and they end up being stranded there. The estate agent hasn't turned up, so they kind of just find a spare key and just let themselves in, because they know that they can't exactly get anywhere or they can't do anything, probably not even until the next day. They basically just make themselves at home for the night, and our female main character, I've completely forgotten her name, I'm so sorry, she ends up finding a hidden room and behind a bookcase, and in this room there are full of tape recordings from the psychiatrist and her patients. I absolutely love secret tape recordings, one of my favorite things to include in any book or any movie. So mysterious. But she starts listening to these tape recordings and she begins to unravel what really happened to the psychiatrist. I thought the story was so gripping. I was genuinely hooked from start to finish. I also absolutely loved the way that it was written out as well. You had the point of view from the psychiatrist from back in the past, so you would read about her, what she was experiencing through different times, and then it would take you back to the present, where you then went back to our female main character and her husband in the house. That jump back and forth made it so interesting because you could start making connections in your head, but it kind of left you at a point where you needed to unravel something. It was written so well. The plot twist, in my opinion, was absolutely phenomenal. It was so fast, but so well executed. It really caught me off guard. If I don't see a plot twist coming, or I don't have the slightest inkling, and it hits me, then it's amazing. I cannot fault the plot twist whatsoever. One thing I will say, and I hope that this isn't technically a spoiler, I'm not going to say anything about what happens in the story, but one thing I will say is I genuinely went to DNF this book. I think it was like page 77-ish, if I remember correctly, because I thought it gave away who the perpetrator was in this story. But please push through, because that was the biggest mistake I almost ever made, because I was so wrong. I genuinely had to get my friend to Google what actually happens, and she was like, no, keep reading, like, you're so wrong. And I'm so glad, because even though that could technically spoil it for me, because now I know who it isn't, I'm so glad I kept reading, because it was so worth it for the plot twist. So yeah, keep on reading. Don't make the same mistake that I did. I ended up giving the book 3 stars. I know that seems really low, considering everything that I just said about the book, but a 3-star read is still really good for me. It may even be 3.5, I'm not too sure. I'm really bad with ratings. I really struggle with them. So I think I put a bit of pressure on myself, because I will sometimes sit there and say, oh, I think a book is like 4 stars. And then I'll say to myself, yeah, but you rated this book 4 stars and you may like this book more than the other, and my brain just kerfuffles. So I'm just going to throw out a random rating for now. But for me, there were unfortunately just a couple of things that just didn't quite add up for me, or made me feel a little bit disconnected from the story. The main thing was that I really just did not get along with our characters at all, like whatsoever. Not necessarily our female main character, but the male main character, I really struggled to get on with him. If there are characters in a story and I don't quite get along with them, it just makes me feel a bit disconnected from the story, because I don't really care what they're saying or about what they're doing, or they just infuriate me so much it just makes me want to throw a pillow against the wall. Essentially, in this book, our female main character, and I'm so sorry, I forgot her name, it's just completely gone out of my brain. Trisha. Her name's Trisha. She ends up getting scared in the house because she's hearing noises, or at one point I think she notices like boot prints in the house, and she's like, well, hang on a minute, we haven't been outside and they weren't there before, so someone's in this house. But her husband is just constantly like, you're overthinking it. It's not really happening, or no, you're just overreacting, or oh, maybe it's hormones kicking in. And I'm just like, why are you so mean? You can tell he genuinely loves her, and they're such like a lovey-dovey couple. But this happens consistently throughout the book. Like, she'll hear a noise, or she thinks something's happening, or something has happened, and she can't figure out why or how that happened without more people being in this house. And he's just constantly like, just go to sleep, it's fine. And it's like, what? Why are you not being a bit more sympathetic? It just really irritated me. And he was just constantly like, oh, I'm gonna go back to work now, like, just do your thing, like, you're just overthinking it. Maybe want to kind of like bash their heads together a little bit, but I would still recommend it. It was a great introduction to her work, and it was such an easy read. Really gripping, definitely. Going into the last book that I read in the month of June, and it was an urban fantasy. I haven't really dabbled in this genre before, so this was very new to me. And this book was Broken Seven Bonds, which is book one of the Bonds That Tie series by J. Bree. This series was in my Amazon basket for, I genuinely think, over a year. And I finally at one point got an Amazon voucher and I ended up just getting them because I just couldn't see them sat there in my Amazon basket for any longer. I don't actually know where this series is going in terms of its story, but I kind of like the unknown with that and I'm really excited to see where we go with it. So from everything I've gathered in book one so far, it follows the story of our main character, Ollie, and she lives in a world where people are bonded to a certain amount of people. I think you can have one bond, but a lot of people seem to have multiple bonds, and then those people are known as like the central bonds, and that's what she is. She has multiple bonds, not just one, not just two, but 5 other guys. Definitely gives me Why Choose vibes at this point. So if you're into that, this may be the series for you. And a lot of people in this world have powers, and she is a very powerful individual. She is actually on the run from the Resistance, who are people who are trying to eliminate people with powers. Her family were unalived many years ago, and she's been on the run ever since and trying to look after herself, and she has to pretend that she doesn't have any powers. But she ends up being found by her bonds, and they basically throw a GPS tracker in her and they're like, look, you are not going anywhere, sit back down. She's absolutely livid about this because she just doesn't want to be around them anyway, but I think it's more the fact that she doesn't want to bring harm to people around her because of what happened to her family. Her bonds end up taking her back home and they give her a dormitory at a college, and this college accepts people with powers, and they're like, look, you're going to get an education, you're going to sort your life out, and we are going to be watching over you 24/7. It's very much forced proximity, and she really doesn't want anything to do with these bonds, and she absolutely hates every single one of them. She sees them as controlling and she sees them as like bullies, and she just doesn't want anything to do with them. But she literally can't really go anywhere right now. So she kind of deals with it, and she has a bodyguard literally following her around all day, every day, and it's basically one of her bonds. She ends up making like a best friend at this school, and she kind of relaxes a little bit, but her bonds are still very much irritating her. One of them is actually a professor at the school, and he is basically trying to ruin her life and ruin everything for her. And she's forced to hang out with them and train with them. They want to try and like build up muscles with her and, you know, help to defend herself. And they throw her into all these different courses and all these different training things. And she's very much like, I've had enough of this. So I ended up rating this book 3.75 stars. I thought this was a really easy to read. I did find myself wanting to find out more about her backstory and her life and why she's doing everything that she's doing. I also found the bonds really interesting as well. There's definitely more to them, I think, that is led on. It was really interesting seeing how she was kind of adapting to a lifestyle again and having to go to college and all these different things. I really loved seeing her development in her character and getting stronger and working on herself. Like, it was really interesting to see where the story was going to go. I'm also really interested in the Resistance as well. They're definitely going to be a huge part to this story. The humor in this book was absolutely incredible. She is a very stubborn female lead, but also a very cool lead as well, if that makes sense. Sometimes when a character has too much attitude, it irritates me because they're just so miserable all the time, but that's not what it's like for her. She very much doesn't like her bonds, and her inner monologues are absolutely hilarious. But I think because she's quite funny and quite sarcastic, you do kind of laugh along with her. The bonds as well, they're quite stubborn, but you know full well that she's going to end up with probably all of them. Really don't know how that's gonna work, but I guess we'll find out. Like I said, this typically isn't the kind of thing I read, but I wanted to dabble in it because I heard amazing things about it. Apparently it's got great cliffhangers and twists along the way. And I'm also really excited to see the bonds powers and what it is that they can do as well, because I don't think off the top of my head, don't think we've dabbled into any of their powers yet, bar one of them, unless I've forgotten. I think for me, the only reason why I didn't rate this any higher is purely just because it was a bit of a slower book for me. It is a 6-book series though, so I think it's definitely going to pick up the pace in the next book onwards. And I was told by one of my close friends that she has read this series, and she did say that from book 2 it really does pick up the pace. So I completely get that. That's absolutely fine. I don't need book 1 to be fast paced. Still a lot of unknowns at the moment, still a lot of uncertainty in terms of like what's actually going on in the story, but very excited to see where it goes. So yeah, looking forward to dabbling the rest of the book. Going into July now, so I'm going to throw in the 2 books that I read in July. So the first one that I read is actually another thriller, but one thing I will say is this is a very dark thriller. It's a lot different to a typical murder mystery type thriller, and that is The Butterfly Garden. But please, please, please check your trigger warnings before going into this book. It's dark. One thing I will say is it's not descriptive, but you know full well bad things are happening. So yeah, please just check your trigger warnings, I beg you. So this story has a huge mansion, and on the side, hidden away, is a place known as the Butterfly Garden. And it's a secret garden where not butterfly insects are being kept, but girls are being kept by this man who's very obsessive, and he's been holding them hostage. He believes that he has taken them from the scary world and keeping them safe. Definitely not what's happening. This is not a spoiler, this is literally on the back of the book. You are getting the perspective from a survivor. They've managed to escape, and she is being questioned by the FBI. It will take you between the present, which is in third person, where they're all talking in the interview and in this little room, and then first person is when it switches back to what's actually going on for the girl while she is in this butterfly garden. I've never read a book before, I don't think, where it's flicked between first and third person. I mean, I guess you can say that The Book Thief does it a little bit, but not in comparison to how much this book does it. But it's not confusing, do not worry. And there are also no chapters in this book either, but there are clear breaks where it swaps between the interview with the agents and then being back in the butterfly garden. I found it really unique actually, because the first person parts are basically where she's explaining to the interviewers or the FBI agents like what was going on for her, but where you're obviously getting all of the dialogue of the characters and everything that's being said and everything that's being done, it feels like it's technically 2 different things. It's like you're living a memory, but she's also talking in an interview. It's so well written. At least that's kind of how I interpreted it when I was reading it. But essentially we're following her journey and how the girls escaped this garden. I gave the book 4 stars. This was such a gripping read. Of course, it's not a great book in terms of what it's actually about, if that makes sense, but it was so well written, and I was just rooting for these girls from the get-go. I really wanted to find out how they managed to escape. Also wanted to find out about the butterfly garden, how it came about, like the story behind it, and just how the girls were coping and what they had to go through and all that sort of stuff. It's a very, very gripping book, and because obviously you know that at some point the girls are planning to get out, you're so there for them, like you're rooting for them and you want to see it happen. So incredibly sad, so incredibly heartbreaking, so dark, really, really dark, but so gripping. It really was. So I think it's called like the Collectors series or something like that. I'm not too sure, but there are more books, but I don't know if they're connected or not, or whether they're just kind of similar things. I think for me, the 1 or 2 reasons why this book wasn't 5 stars is because number 1, there were just a couple of times in the book where I felt like the interactions with the gardener, so he's called the gardener, the guy that captures them, I just felt like they were unrealistic, but at the same time, I don't know whether maybe I'm not interpreting it in the right way. For example, not a spoiler, but at one point in the book, the gardener is kind of sitting on a rock outside in the garden and he's watching the girls play tag between them. They're all running around giggling. And in my head, I'm like, would anyone be giggling around this guy? Like, considering the things that he does and who this guy is, just made me feel a bit strange at times. But at the same time, like, were the girls just trying to escape such a traumatic experience? Like, I don't know, but there were a few points in the book where I was like, would they have reacted like that? And the second thing is, again, I'm not a huge thing and it didn't sway my opinions too much, but I think there was definitely room for a really good plot twist and it didn't happen. That's not the reason why I rated this book any lower. Like I said, it was mainly the emotional side of things to what I just mentioned. But I do think there was room for a really good twist in this, and it's really hard to say without spoiling anything. So if you are interested in reading this book, all I'm going to give you hint-wise is missing person. That's all I'm going to say. But I think something could have been done with that. But the plot twist in this book was still really good. I didn't see it coming. And do you know what? I didn't even expect a plot twist in this story. I honestly thought the plot of this story was just how the girls got out of this place, but no, there was actually a plot twist thrown in there as well, so I can't complain. So for that reason, I'm happy with my 4-star rating. And then finally going into the last book that I finished literally just a couple of days ago before I started my new reading challenge, and that is Nightshade by Autumn Woods. This is a murder mystery romance, got some thriller in there. It's so good. I do love romance, but I love kind of either historical romance, you know, think like Divine Rivals, for example. Obsessed with Divine Rivals, my all-time favorite and always will be. And I have read romances in the past, like sports romance. I've read Icebreaker. Don't think sports romance is my thing, if I'm going to be honest. So when I picked up this one, I was a bit hesitant because I was like, oh, what kind of romance is it? Am I going to like it? But when I saw that it had murder mystery involved in it, I was like, oh, this sounds really, really good. It's also in Scotland and it's also promoted as dark academia. And when I was reading the reviews on this, a fair few people said that they weren't getting the full dark academia vibes. But for me personally, I pictured everything pretty well. It's set during like autumn and winter times. It's dark, it's dreary, it's raining like all the time. You know, it's foggy, it's misty. They're out in the Highlands as well. And it's just, I was personally getting the vibes really well. And because it's also a castle-based university, you know, I was getting all of those vibes as well. I absolutely loved it. It was really good. So the story itself follows two main characters, Ophelia, beautiful name, right? And Alex. So Ophelia is attending this university because she wants to discover how her parents were unalived. But Alex, who is also attending this university, was part of the incident, let's say, not directly, but he has connections as to what happened to Ophelia's parents. So she absolutely despises this guy. It's kind of enemies to lovers. The reason why I say kind of is because she absolutely despises him and she wants to chop his head off, but he likes her, if that makes sense. So it is enemies to lovers because, like I said, she really doesn't like him and she doesn't want to go near him whatsoever. But at the same time, like, because he doesn't hate her back, it's like, but yeah, you get what I'm trying to say. But of course, as she starts kind of bumping into him and he begins to pester her and flirt with her and all these different things, she does start to kind of fall in love with him, and she realizes this is a really bad idea. Like, I'm trying to solve my parents' unaliving and all these different things, and crazy things start happening and going on, and she starts finding out all these mysteries and all of these things, and it's so gripping. I absolutely loved it. I gave the book 4 stars. Such an easy read for me. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved the vibes. The majority of the rating is the vibes. I absolutely loved it, but also the humor in the book as well. I was laughing out loud so many times in this book. There were references to things in this book that I wouldn't have thought anyone would really think about or know about. This is either gonna be so relatable or you're just gonna look at me and think, what the hell are you talking about? But Club Penguin was mentioned in this book, and I was so happy about it. If you were part of the Club Penguin crew, let me know. We're going to be best friends. So many funny references in this book, and it just really made me giggle, and it was just so relatable. Absolutely loved it. The banter between the characters as well, and the inner monologues, the attitudes, so great. I also absolutely loved our characters in general. Ophelia is quite moody, but she's so funny. And I also love how she gets called Twist, as in Oliver Twist, because what she wears is like old fashioned and stuff like that. But I love it. That's basically how I dress. So very easy to relate to her in that sense. But also Alex as well. He's so funny, really humorous, and just the nicknames they come out with each other. Like at one point he calls her fish food, and I know that probably doesn't sound funny right now, but there is context behind it, but I thought it was quite funny. He's also a very sweet guy as well. You don't realize how much is going on in his life. So yeah, it's crazy just how much backstory there are to the characters that they don't know about each other. And of course there is the secret as well, that she knows that his family is part of the incident as to what caused her parents to pass away in a helicopter crash, but Alex is completely clueless. He doesn't know. So she's fallen in love with him, but she's not being truthful with him about why she's really here and what she's actually trying to solve. Oh, so many secrets. Fantastic book, really easy to read, definitely recommend it. The only reason why I think for me I didn't rate it any higher is because I felt like the romance was a little bit rushed. It kind of went from 0 to 100 very quickly, and I think because of that it just made me feel a little bit like, oh well, that was a sudden change. I think had it just been like so many pages more and dragged out ever so slightly more, I think it would have worked out so well. But considering Ophelia is like very stubborn and very like, no, it just jumped to romance very quickly. And then all of a sudden she was kind of like in his bed, and I was like, well, no, you wouldn't last. And then the only other thing is I couldn't really get behind the attitude behind everybody as well. It's almost like everybody in this university just was so aggressive and wanted to unalive one another. Everyone was so threatening and everyone was like carrying weapons around. And in my head, I'm just like, what is going on at this university? Like, why is everyone out for blood? They were like the only two things that I felt a little bit like, oh, this seems strange on. But other than that, loved the vibes, loved the banter, loved the characters. Loved it so much. And that concludes my June and half of July reading wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. I absolutely love doing these videos. I love talking about books and recommending them to you. If you have read any of these books, please let me know in the comments, or if any of them are on your TBR, let me know, because I would love to know if you're going to be reading them anytime soon, or what your thoughts and feelings are if you have read them. Let me know in the comments what your favorite read of June was, and if you're reading any books now, if you've had any recently over the last couple of weeks in July. But have a great rest of your week, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.